Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk will please call the roll.
Chairperson Carroll.
Here.
Sorry, one second. Okay. Vice Chair Young.
Here.
Secretary Treasurer Heft, absent. Mayor Marl.
Here.
Councilmember Gearbaugh.
Here.
Staff Rep Cole. Commissioner Beardsley, absent. Commissioner Fosdick, absent. And Commissioner Troika.
Here. Also present, City Planner Arbach, Sally Boss, OHM, City Attorney, he's on Zoom, Community Director Harrington, and City Manager O'Toole. Is there a motion to accept the agenda as distributed?
Move to approve as distributed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes as submitted?
I'll move to approve the meeting minutes of October 26, 2022 as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comments. Persons requested but not required to state their name and address. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Are there any comments?
Well, we barely have a quorum tonight, so I know what I would like is not going to happen tonight. Tonight, you're going to take ordinances on our approve or not approve two marijuana dispensaries. The third one I have no issue with. The one where Mickey's is, since the last meeting, the sidewalk is now just starting to get replaced. They've broken a water main. People on that end of town can't get into town by the sidewalk right now. Nor could they get there the last couple of weeks because there was always consistently a car or a truck blocking the sidewalk. We need to do something about this quickly. We need to find a way to get people to town while the sidewalk's being worked on. Additionally, I still am not okay with this place. It's too close to neighborhoods, schools. There's going to be a Catholic school open there next year. It's going to be children there. And it's in a bad area of town. There's a lot of marginalized people over there. In terms of the one going back by Tractor Supply Company, I'm still not okay with that. It's going near Rensselaer Farm, where we have students that attend field trips there, as well as educational opportunities. And then you also have the high school's not far away. I know it's 1,000 feet, but it's pushing it. And then we have special needs students that work at both Tractor Supply Company and at New to You again. It's one of their work sites. I'm not comfortable being near kids. In terms of something that's not marijuana related, I'm so excited about the gym coming, so that's great. I hope we can decide on that tonight. I'm excited for that to come. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else? Please.
My name is Barbara Anderson. I live in Berwick Park, and I just have a comment to make on the new Planet Fitness. I've been lived in Berwick Park for 20 years, and we had this problem before with the previous owner about in the summertime, because they did not have air conditioning, they'd open the back door, and we get all sorts of, I don't know whether it was music or not, but we're hoping that that problem will not happen again with Planet Fitness. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Janet Dillon. I'm a council member, city resident. and I am commenting about the marijuana establishments on the east side of town behind Rentschler Farm. I would like this body to consider that these establishments are going to be near Rentschler Farm, and I urge you to look beyond just the 1,000-foot mark that we have for schools and really focus on the harmonious aspect of this. Rentschler Farm is a historic landmark in our community. It's also an educational component. Each year, hundreds of Saline area school students visit that site. It's open to the public for tours and such. I view that farm in the same manner in which I view the one-room schoolhouse. Obviously, the one-room schoolhouse sits on school property, so it is not, would be excluded from this. But I do view Rentschler Farm in that same manner, and so I would urge you to consider that in making your decisions.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Moving on, we have unfinished business. There is an application from Romanio Bari of AM and BH Industries, LLC, for a special land use in the C3 district from Appendix A, Article 4, Section 404, parentheses 13B13, for an adult use marijuana retailer and a preliminary site plan remodeling the existing 1,350 square foot building and an additional 30 parking spaces at 751 West Michigan, Saline, parcel 18-18-01-32507. We have a memo dated from Mr. Harrington and City Planner Auerbach. Ben, would you like to start?
Absolutely.
And before we begin, Mr. Chair, just to put on the record, as I have been throughout on this particular matter, I am recused from participation in this one. I hope it doesn't affect quorum.
You're excused.
Yeah, so due to the controversy around this one and the fact that the applicant resubmitted a different site plan, as well as for the next case, for all the cases tonight, I'll be doing presentations, just so you're aware. But I will. You got it, Ben. It's a 11-9 meeting. Where today's date is. And then I think they're in order. I hope they're in order. Yes. Cool.
That's the final medical.
Oh.
Wrong address.
Looking for
That's the
751.
right address.
They're pretty similar, unfortunately, the next one. Yeah, here it goes. I apologize for the mislabeling. Their new medical final site plan matches this identically, so you'll see later pretty similar conditions, pretty straightforward. So it's a SLU and a preliminary site plan adult use for AM and BH Industries at 751 West Michigan Avenue. Location is obviously on the south side of Michigan, West Michigan Avenue. It's the former home to Mickey's Dairy Twist. It is currently zoned Commercial 3. Or I could do that. Okay, we're doing this thing again. All right, so the request is for a special land use in which the Planning Commission will make a recommendation to council based on ordinances. So although the SLU has some subjectivity to it, at the end of the day, the SLU standards have to be applied based on existing city ordinances and standards. In addition, for a preliminary site plan, we're primarily looking at bulk zoning requirements and general concept. Deeper engineering reviews happen with the final site plan. We'll be able to see the dichotomy of this later tonight as we look at the final site plan for the medical portion of this site. As I mentioned, it's currently, or was formerly home to Mickey's Ice Cream and Dairy Twist. It's about a 1,350 square foot building, and the home that was on the site is currently being torn down. It was built in 1951. Can you help me out a little bit? I don't know what the deal is today. So to go over the 7 special land use requirements, 1, it will be harmonious and in accordance with the general character and any specific objectives of the master plan. 2, it will be deemed, so I can't even read that from here, so what we're going to do is pull around. Here, I'll move the TV over so I can read it too. This is a problem with not having a shared laptop. Yeah, so 2, that it will be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character or the general vicinity. It will not change the essential character of the area. 3, that it will not be hazardous or disturbing to existing, abutting, and nearby uses or uses reasonably anticipated in the future. 4, that it will be an improvement in relation to property in the immediate vicinity and to the city as a whole. 5, that it will be served adequately by essential public services and facilities, or that the persons responsible for the establishment or the proposed use will be able to adequately provide those. 6, that it will not create excessive additional public costs and will not be a detriment to the economic welfare of the city. And 7, that it will be consistent with the intent and purposes of this ordinance and comply with all specific standards which are established for said use by the ordinance. Okay, well, it's still being difficult today. Apologize, folks. So out of those 7, between the Carlisle-Wortman report, looking at OHM's comments for the final site plan that was submitted in conjunction with this, as well as our own staff review, we found that it clearly meets criteria 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And for criteria 2, the applicant should confirm the number of employees that will be there at peak shift, as that affects parking considerations. Going over some of the things that we review for a preliminary, once again, deeper engineering reviews occur with the final site plan. But for the preliminary, we're looking at area, width, height, and setbacks, natural resources, the building location, general site arrangement, parking, loading, site access and circulation, safety paths, landscaping, lighting, signs, and then floor plan and elevation. So doing a staff review of this preliminary site plan, we have 3 comments. The first is that the existing sign on the property, which is by the access point, needs to be moved to better comply with access standards. Landscaping, the Planning Commission should consider whether any additional landscaping buffer is needed for the property. And then lastly, the Planning Commission will need to determine whether or not the applicant needs to be brought into greater compliance with access management standards. Obviously, there are some MDOT considerations there too about whether MDOT would allow different standards. So our recommendation is I first recommend that you move to approve the special land use, or move to recommend approval of the special land use to the City Council if the applicant sufficiently addresses the following concerns. The first one was how many people are going to be there for a peak shift. And then second, the anticipated customer traffic with both retail and medical and how that might impact the original proposal. And then next, move to approve the preliminary site plan for AM and BH Industries with the following conditions that I have listed there in totality. For condition number 6, I would like Engineer Boss to kind of clarify. We had a meeting the other day on the specific remediation efforts that the applicant may or may not have to complete. And with that, I will return to the dais for questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Harrington?
Couple questions for you, Ben. You were just mentioning those 3 items. The existing sign, that's the pole sign that will be removed
Yes,
and not replaced, correct?
it would be removed. They could potentially replace it somewhere else, but then would have to conform with our sign standards.
Yeah, thought that was a non-conforming thing. The landscaping will be part of finals?
Yes, so that you can add a condition. It's the same site plan that we'll see later today about additional landscaping requirements that you may want to see for a buffer from the parking lot. It's at the Planning Commission's discretion, though. There's no ordinance requirement at the moment for them to further landscape, although it's a beautification effort.
Got it. And then just clarify more on the MDOT standards. What is your intention on that one?
So for the access points, the site is non-conforming, but most access on MDOT would be considered non-conforming at this point. It's just a point of consideration. I feel comfortable approving it as it is, but if there is a further consideration from the Planning Commission or a concern, we're all here to answer questions on those things.
Any change on that would make it difficult for that property, correct, or even else?
I believe so, but it would matter which specific standards we would ask them to alter or change.
And then the last one, of course, there have been some concerns about what's going on in the property right now. You talked about the water retention or whatever in terms of the bioretention. Is that more a final site plan result, or do we need to talk about that tonight?
That will also be included on their final site plan for medical. So there, I believe, if I'm wrong, Ms. Boss, please correct me, that they have to choose in one other remediation effort as a result. But once again, at the Planning Commission's discretion.
And then there is no concerns or any other issues related to surrounding property owners with what's going on now in terms of potential runoff or other issues?
I have not heard any concerns from potential property or nearby property owners about the runoff issue specifically. There have been some construction-related disputes, but we've been resolving those as they come along.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Any other questions for Mr. Harrington? Mike, do you want to review any report, any differences, additional?
I think Mr. Harrington covered the high points of it. Again, just to reiterate, the 3 decision points with this review is the increase in parking, the whether any additional landscaping along the eastern boundary is required, and the approval of the nonconformities with the access drive. Like we mentioned in our review, the change to a 2-way drive is an overall improvement in our assessment, and any additional modifications may be just a slight, either changing the offset or alignment with adjacent or opposite drives, but that would be something that MDOT would likely comment on.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memos dated November 2nd from Mr. Harrington and October 27th from Planner Arbach?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion passes. Would the applicant like to make any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Andy Andre from Avanti Development Group, 330 Enterprise Court, Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, 48302. I'm a designer working on the project, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant. And so the plan that you see in front of you has been a little bit of an evolution, and the product that we have here is, I think, better than what we initially started. We have a much better circulation. One of the key points starting off right off the bat was that driveway. And one of the things, when we looked at the driveway, we contacted MDOT right away. We got a permit application in, and we've been working with George Saif at the Brighton TSC. We have a permit for that driveway location. And so we've been diligent, and I think it is mentioned by the staff that there used to be 2 drives there, so that consolidation to the 1 drive was looked on very favorably by MDOT as well. And while I think, as Mr. Harrington had mentioned, you as the city have your access management guidelines, it's really hard to meet every one of those criteria there, but the improvements that we are making just go to improving the situation for ingress and egress at that location. We did do some traffic projections, and we provided that as part of the submittal that you have in front of you as well. We did both weekday and weekend as well, and we included that information. When we look at the plan itself and some of the items that were brought up in the review, we're looking at a peak of employees. That's one of the items, was 8 employees plus 1 security. And so that goes with the request of having the 30 parking spaces in the site plan. When we back up and we look at it and say, what did the site look like before we are looking at what we're proposing right here? One of the things that we've done from a positive standpoint, not only the access management, but also is the imperviousness. When we looked at that before, did some calculations, majority of that property, fairly high majority of the property, was covered with impervious surface. The calculations we provided that, I think on sheet C 3.0, we're, I think about 77%, if my eyes don't fail me. And then what we've done is we've reduced that down. We've incorporated the landscape islands within the parking area, which weren't there before. We've increased, some buffering available to it. With it being a small site, that's quite an impact, and we've reduced that down to about 69% imperviousness. And we also incorporated the bioretention island within that parking area too. And one of the points, I think it was brought up, and I had a chance to talk with Sally, I think yesterday, and that is we have an opportunity to incorporate that second LID, that second bioretention. We have that ability to do that, and so that's already been sketched up, and I'm working on that. So those items that were brought up during the reviews, I think are all valid, and we have the ability to address all of those items. One item, I think, when it comes to the parking, we talked about the landscaping. I guess that's that's a planning commission discretion. It's not required by the ordinance. We are proposing, I think, some nice landscaping out there. And then with the driveway, I think with us working diligently with MDOT, having that permit, those items have been addressed. The location, when it talks about the sign, I think Mr. Harrington brought up, the sign is an existing sign, and we'd like to utilize that sign. You see that all the time, it's grandfathered in. That's what we are proposing, that's what we had indicated on the plan. So I think with those items, you can see that we're addressing them. We have working diligently on the permitting and such, and we feel that any of the outstanding items can be addressed as we continue to work with staff. So be happy to answer any questions that come up.
Are there any questions?
Have you pulled the Washtenaw County Soil Erosion Sediment Control Permit?
Yes, so that was part of it. And then, I'm glad you brought that up because I have a note here. So understand, anytime there's construction, there's always going to be some disturbances, and that's always going to happen. And if anybody's aware, if you've been aware, there's been a shortage of concrete, and you say, is there really been? I can tell you there honestly has been a shortage of concrete. There's been a shortage of the cement that goes into mixing it, and so that's caused a little bit of scheduling issues in that. What I can tell you is the pour for the concrete for both the driveway, the approach, and then the walk is scheduled for tomorrow, so we want to get that addressed and understand that it can, construction can sometimes be a headache, but it's going to be addressed.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any comments and questions for the commission?
Actually, I've got one. Regarding the rear, we don't see a rear elevation, but can you explain to me, Ben, is there a retaining wall back there? I just see where there's a list, looks like a length of arborvitae or whatever. How does that flow into the back property?
That might be a better question for Engineer Voss. I'm not familiar with the retaining wall that may or may not be there. I know there's kind of a swale at the very least.
There's no retaining wall, it's just curb, so it looks like it flows the way it always has off that back corner.
Okay. And your recommendation earlier was about the sign. I would rather it conform to our current issues, so how do we address that?
I would need the size of the sign, so I don't have that off the top of my head. Right here, I have to pull it up.
Because we have a similar concern on the east side of town where a pole sign was.
Right, and they go to Planner Auerbach's memo too. I don't think that the sign is non-conforming. Not only, I don't know if it's actually a size issue so much as a location issue.
It was the location issue for the proposed ground sign. It needs to be 15 feet setback from the right-of-way and from the access drive. So addressing that would just be a condition that an alternate location would have to be proposed.
So the existing sign that's on the pole will not be allowed, is what you're saying?
The existing sign that's, I only noticed that the proposed sign, whether or not, that the existing sign, I believe, could remain if no changes were being made to it. But on the site plan shows what appeared to be a proposed sign. I didn't see an existing sign specified on there.
I think we need clarification on there.
If it's okay, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so that's a very good question. I think it can be a little confusing when we start to look at these plans. But we identified that is an existing sign, and then we did identify on the plans, I think it's on sheet C 2.1, the existing sign to remain. So we wouldn't propose a new sign. It would be in that exact same location. And certainly, the sign itself, so location, pole, we would propose to maintain the existing location, and we could change out the sign to meet the sign requirements of the ordinance. Thank you.
Because I do know there's conditions on what sign can be replaced depending on what the cost of the sign is versus what it is. Some of those aspects do not allow a non-conforming sign to be continued in its location. So you'll have to address that. The other thing is that sign not potentially a site issue or concern because of the redesign of the driveway?
So you're asking if it violates our clear vision ordinance?
Possibly.
I would have to look more into the language of the clear vision ordinance. It might be, well, I think that where the 15 feet from the right-of-way comes from, actually.
I would have to look to see if there's anything specific to clear visions, but our reference was to the setback requirement.
If I may, for clarification, would you prefer then to add a third condition to this, simply that the non-conforming sign use be removed?
Preferably, yes. That works.
Are there any other questions, comments?
And it's probably for city staff, but I'm kind of trying to figure out where we're going with this. I live on that side of town, I drive by it multiple times a day. We haven't necessarily approved anything. I understand the demolition was by permit, but there's forms up, there's not silt fence up. How is this putting the cart before the horse? Are we just behind on planning commission? Could somebody explain this to me?
Yeah, there's a couple factors at play. So when talking to our attorney, they can do by right improvements, but technically the planning commission has the right to effectively usurp any decision or any permit given to them. Now, that being said, there have been some concerns over the construction of the property, but the building department is actively working with the property owner to bring those things into compliance, including Washtenaw County to work with some of the soil erosion aspects of it. So yes, it's definitely messy at the moment, but we're actively working as a building department to control some of the aspects of the construction of the property.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to recommend to city council that we approve with conditions?
Move to recommend with conditions enumerated 1 and 2.
Second?
I request a third one be added as an amendment.
Planner Auerbach, could you confirm, do you feel that that would be better suited to add as a condition to the special land use or to this preliminary site plan
Regarding the sign?
regarding the sign conformance? Yeah.
I think the special land use and the last criterion having to do with compliance with the standards of the
Okay,
ordinance.
great. So
the
yes,
next
it
one?
would be on,
Okay.
no, it would be on the special land use then.
You can really offer it on either, but if you want to offer it now, Councilmember Gearboff,
Yeah.
feel free.
I make a motion to add that as an amendment.
So that'd be item 3.
Yeah, that'd be item 3.
I'm still amenable to moving that motion.
I will second it then.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Would you like to defend your motion or explain?
I think it's pretty clear cut.
Okay.
I think we're at the point where we need to move forward and recommend to city council to adopt the special land use. And it would be my understanding, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, that this would appear on our next regular agenda, which would be a week from this coming Monday.
I believe it has to be noticed again because of public,
First meeting in December?
Clerk Ritchie could probably fill you in on the date of
The
required.
December 5th will
Okay.
work for noticing.
Very good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion passed 5-0. Is there a motion to approve with conditions the application for the preliminary site plan?
I'll move to approve with conditions numbers 1 through 6 that are enumerated in our memo.
Is there Second?
Second.
Any questions?
I just have one comment, if I may, Mr. Chair, and I'll actually bring this up or be able to speak substantively to the matter on agenda item 22-34, which is the final site plan for this same property. But since it was referenced already by staff and by the applicant, and I'm referring to the final site plan at the moment, I will have some comments and suggestions relating to landscaping, because I do think there's some opportunity to enhance the landscaping on this site. I have long stated that the aesthetics in and around commercial properties on the west side of town are not as appealing as various commercial districts elsewhere in the community, in large part because of the age of properties and when certain parcels were developed. So I think this provides us an opportunity to really beef up and enhance this particular parcel as it goes through a significant revitalization. But I'll support the motion as offered by Commissioner Young, Vice Chair Young, excuse me.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion passes 5-0. Next on the agenda is an application from Alexander Kesswetter of the Woods for special land use in District 1 from Appendix A, Article 11A, Section 11A04, parentheses 1, for an adult use marijuana retailer and a preliminary site plan developing the .48 acre lot and constructing a 1,691 square foot building, creating 17 parking spaces at 7608 East Michigan, parcel 18-12-31-470-034. Mr. Herring.
Perfect. So this was tabled from or postponed from the last Planning Commission meeting. So it is 7608 East Michigan Avenue. We will have them readdress it. As you can see, the property is on Sage Court. So just to go into it first, the reason it was postponed was to ask our attorney, Mr. Anthony Chubb, about what the context around the question of harmonious meant in our special land use. So I'll address that when we go through the standards again. So the location is on the north side of Michigan Avenue. It's technically on Sage Court. It's directly east of the Phorecia plant and the Tractor Supply retail store. It is zoned SPA 1. Or I could go backwards for some reason. Okay, cool. So as similar to the last proposal, the request is a special land use for adult use marijuana retailer, where obviously you all make a recommendation to the city council, preliminary site plan to go over the bulk zoning requirements, general concept. As I mentioned, it's undeveloped, right next to Tractor Supply, and it's about a half-acre lot, a little bit under that. So to go over the 7 special land use requirements, as I mentioned last time, it is not an entirely subjective set of what do these words mean to us when it comes to harmonious. We're looking at existing city standards and ordinances. Is there an ordinance that says that these two uses are not harmonious with each other? Is there something in our future land use that would indicate that these two uses are not harmonious with one another? Do we have a reason to believe that it's going to cause a nuisance such as loud noise or an odor or something like that? So they're not totally subjective, and we have to think about, well, what standards does the city have when it comes to this? And if, in fact, you don't support this, you need to have a finding of fact, on why it's not acceptable, and then why maybe ameliorating method like screening or an odor system or something like that would not be applicable and would not actually solve the issue in this instance. So out of the 7 special land use requirements, the staff found that 1, 3, 5, 6, and 7 were largely met. Number 2, there were some minor concerns over the number of employees at the site for a peak shift and whether the building at the south, the door at the south will be an emergency exit or not. The applicant is here tonight and can answer those questions. As for engineering reviews, City Engineer Humphreys, as well as City Engineer Boss and myself sat down. The utilities are present for the site, so that's not a concern at the moment. Deeper engineering reviews, as well as it's a new development, will definitely be occurring with the final site plan. And then lastly, we're going to have the applicant confirm that they do in fact meet the 1,000-foot buffer from school district property. There'll be a licensed surveyor that will likely have to perform that action, but that will be a condition of both this site plan as well as the final site plan, and we can get more into that as we get closer to construction. So preliminary site plan requirements, as mentioned earlier, we're looking at a wide variety of bulk zoning requirements, general aesthetic, design, et cetera. So staff had concerns on site access and circulation. We'd like the applicant to provide a turning template to demonstrate that a garbage truck will be able to access the dumpster enclosure drive, as well as any damaged sidewalk should be replaced if this project is, if this project is approved. So our recommendations are to move to recommend approval of the SLU for the Woods if the applicant can sufficiently address the following comments and concerns: the number of employees at a peak shift, whether the door on the south elevation will be an emergency exit, whether any equipment or procedural controls are proposed to reduce potential marijuana odor, and then confirmation that the facility will meet the 1,000-foot buffer from the school district property. In addition, we would recommend that you move to approve the preliminary site plan with the conditions that the applicant contact the community development department to readdress the property properly on Sage Court, that they should provide a turning template to show that the garbage truck can access the dumpster enclosure drive. Any damaged sidewalk should be replaced. And the fire department has specifically requested that a fire hydrant be brought onto the parcel and shown in the final site plan submission. In addition, it was their preference that it be shown in the front and be placed in the front of the building. And then lastly, no parking fire lane sign should be in all roadways, including the portion of the parcel that is the entrance to the Tractor Supply.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Herring?
If there are no questions for Mr. Harrington, Mr. Chair, or comments from Mr. Arbach, I would move to acknowledge receipt of his memo.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The applicant? Like to speak?
The applicant might be on Zoom as well.
Oh, yeah, I'm on Zoom. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you, but we need to.
Can you enlarge him, Ben?
There you
Thank
go.
you. Perfect. We can see and hear you now.
Okay, great. Good evening, council. Thank you for accommodating us by Zoom here this evening. I'm actually traveling.
You're muted. Or we lost your signal.
Okay, so addressing items, I can go through these, and I have talked to Mr. Harrington through this process and understand what some of the concerns are with this board and with rolling this new program out. So what our intention is, and from our other locations, would be to have 8 employees on site at max operating time. The door in the rear would be an exit door. We could accommodate that. And frankly, I mean, on any of these, whatever you direct us to do, we're fine putting special conditions on that. You know, I know that there were some questions about the location and whether it's harmonious with the surrounding commercial buildings. I can tell you that we've won, you know, a number of awards for our design. Our design is an important part of our whole team, our brand, and it will be the same here, as you can see from our site plan. You know, as far as odors or nuisance, we don't experience that at any retail store. And frankly, nobody does, because we're required to have air handlers, which take care of any smell that there might be. And I think that if this was a recurring problem with nuisance and smell, then this board, in doing its due diligence and looking into this program, would have heard that. And it's not the case. So again, we will be a good partner with your community. If there's issues that you have with the building or with the parking or with the signage, we will work with you to accommodate that. We can certainly get somebody in there to do a drawing to show how the garbage truck will be able to enter and exit safely, and take care of the garbage out of there. Have I addressed everything, Ben?
I believe so.
Are there any questions for the applicant? It's not. Thank you very much. I do have a question regarding definition of school district property and whether Rentschler Farm falls in that definition.
Rentschler Farm is owned by the city of Saline. So it would not fall within the definition of the schools. It's owned by the city.
Thank you.
So clarification on that, is the definition state clearly it must be owned by the Saline area school system?
I believe it's actually a state statute citing school-owned property, but we can double-check the specific.
And the state statute doesn't designate museums or that type of entity as a educational type location?
So as we discussed earlier this summer with the city council, as it related to other educational type facilities, whether that be a dance studio or a daycare or a pre-K, we're really limited in our definition of what that is. And at that time, the council chose to not modify the ordinance in any way related to those items, but it is limited to school property. I can double check the code right now, but.
I believe we also define schools within our own ordinance.
Right, that's what it is.
One of our guests would like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
Good evening, council. I'm not Anthony Chubb. I'm George Contis. I'm one of his partners. Unfortunately, Anthony had a conflict today and he asked me to step in. But there is a specific definition regarding what a school means. And within the ordinance, it is a public, private, denominational, or parochial school offering developmental kindergarten, or any grade 1 through 12. And school property means a building, playing field, or property used for school purposes to impart instruction to children or used for functions and events sponsored by a school, except a building used primarily for adult education or college extension courses. So to that end, and in the memorandum that Tony provided to the commission dated November 4, the museum fails to meet that definition.
Thank you. Are there any questions on that issue? Is there?
I do have a question for Mr. Auerbach. I just want to confirm, I remember this from last meeting. Page 7, we have proposed 36 spaces for parking. I counted 17, required 17, with 8 employees on site. That leaves 9 for people that are going there, patrons. Is that typically enough if we're counting 100 square foot per the square footage, one parking spot? Okay.
So the 36 spaces, that was a typo, 17 are proposed. Combined with the 8 staff, and the estimated anticipated customer demand, would be close to combined staff, potential staff on site, and patrons at a peak hour. But again, that's a very approximate estimate, so if to get further clarification, that'd be a question for the applicant.
Okay. Thank you.
You have a question for the applicant?
I guess a question for the applicant, just going off what I had said to the city planner. If you have proposed 17 spaces on site and you're planning on having 8 people, 8 employees, does that affect your peak hour patronage? Will you have enough spots?
Gentleman's there, but he's muted.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, that's a fair question, and I wouldn't expect that probably all of our employees will drive to work every time. And I can tell you in Sheboygan,
You're cutting out.
sorry, in Sheboygan, where we had a store, we had 6 parking spaces there. And when we opened the store in Sheboygan, we were the only location in Sheboygan, and we're extremely busy. and we didn't have an issue with parking. People tend to come in and flow through quickly. It's not like they're, shopping for clothes or going to the grocery store. So the traffic moves pretty fast, and I don't have a concern. If I did, then it would probably be a site that we would say wouldn't work for what we're doing because, we need parking. So we're comfortable with it. I think that we have more than adequate parking there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to recommend to the city council to approve with conditions this application?
Let me just say this. I'm amenable to recommending to approve. Regardless, we do, it's my opinion that we do have to entertain and adopt a motion tonight regarding the special land use. Ultimately, Planning Commission is just an advisory board. It's ultimately up to City Council to decide on whether they want to approve this. But I do think it's important to develop consensus and recommend, or discharge, to City Council one way or the other so that they can consider it. And I suspect Deputy Clerk Ritchie, based on public noticing, that would also be at the first meeting in December. Is that correct? So I would move to approve with conditions.
I'll second.
Any questions or further comment?
I will not be supporting this motion. I believe that there are times when we need to take a stand, and as a result, this is a public-owned facility. It has been used for the education of children for over 25 years in terms of allowing them to come in. We have a program that we work with the schools and have done that for years. This is the reason why we made a concern about 1,000 feet within a school. I believe that this should be an exception as a museum for education, and will not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
This time I'd like to call for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Beardsley? Absent. Commissioner Carroll?
Aye.
Staff Rep Cole? Commissioner Fosdick? Absent. Councilmember Gearbaugh?
Nay.
Commissioner Heft? Absent. Mayor Marl?
Yes. Aye.
Commissioner Troika?
Aye.
And Commissioner Young?
Aye.
5 ayes, 1 no, it passes. And
Thank
3
you.
absent.
At this time, I'd like to call for a motion regarding the approval with conditions for the preliminary site plan for this project. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve with conditions enumerated 1 through 5 in our memo, the preliminary site plan.
I'll second it. Are there any comments?
I would just say, Mr. Chair, I actually thought this was probably ready for preliminary site plan approval at our previous meeting. I do think it meets the criteria for preliminary site plan. I don't think it's anywhere close to being ready for final site plan, but in fairness, the petitioner isn't asking for final site plan approval this evening. So I think it meets the criteria for preliminary, and I'll be voting in the affirmative.
This time, will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Beardsley? Absent. Commissioner Carroll?
Aye.
Staff Rep Cole? Commissioner Fosdick? Absent. Councilmember Gearbaugh?
Nay.
Commissioner Heft? Absent. Mayor Marl?
Yes. Aye.
Commissioner Troika?
Aye.
And Commissioner Young?
Aye.
5 ayes, 1 no, 3 absent, it passes.
All right, this time, I'd like to move on to the next application of Green Trend for a final site plan remodeling the existing 4,131 square foot suite within the existing structure to create a medical marijuana provisioning center at 465 East Michigan, parcel 1812 31 325 018. Mr. Herring.
I think it's in order. Should just be the third one. Yeah. Just for your edification too, we'll do the medical first. The next item on the agenda is the adult use. Per our ordinance, they have to be reviewed separately, but as you'll likely see here, they're virtually identical. So just giving you a heads up. So as we mentioned, it's 465 East Michigan Avenue. It's action item 22-31. At a previous, I believe it was one of your July Planning Commission meetings, you recommended approval of the SOU, and you gave preliminary site plan approval. The city council subsequently gave approval for both adult and medical SOU. The applicant in today's case is Green Trend. It's on the north side of East Michigan Avenue. It is the same plaza as the Goodwill and the Dollar Store. It's in the current location of Come Dancing. It is zoned SPA 1. So for the final site plan, this is the first final site plan for marijuana that we've reviewed as a commission. You approve or deny a formalized site plan based on zoning requirements, general appearance, engineering reviews, and a specific concept. If approved, the applicant must make changes based on the conditions the Planning Commission sets, as well as modifications in the event of conflicts with state building code. If any proposed change after a final site plan approval is found to be immaterial, the applicant will be required to request a site plan amendment from the Planning Commission. In addition, there are specific provisions in our ordinance that would also instigate a required site plan amendment that would then come before you. However, the applicant is actually really not proposing any exterior changes, so that event is unlikely. So as I mentioned, the current property is Come Dancing. It's a 3.7 acre lot, and I believe the proposed suite is 4,131 square feet, but I could be incorrect. It's built in 1968. Here are the, okay, or it can be buggy again. So the Planning Commission shall review the final site plan and approve with or without conditions or deny the application. So it is the straight list. Okay, it went back. Sorry, guys. It is the same conditions as the preliminary site plan, and then the addition is the engineering considerations, the stormwater, utilities, et cetera. Does the site have enough to support it? So doing a final site plan review with Engineer Boss, Mr. Auerbach, and myself, the one remaining concern is that there's still a loading space shown on the site plan, but the loading space should be removed as the applicant has indicated they have no intention of using it. So with that, pretty straightforward, moving into recommendations as we're no longer considering the special land use in this case. We recommend that you move to approve the final site plan for Green Trend with the following conditions. The first is that the loading space should be removed. The second is that prior to beginning construction, the applicant should verify that the existing sidewalks, ramps, and accessible parking spaces are, in fact, ADA compliant. And then 3, prior to beginning construction, the applicant should submit updated plans to OHM, our consultant engineer, showing that existing water, sanitary, and stormwater management system and piping for verification purposes. In addition, it shall be verified that the proposed plantings will not be placed directly above any water or any existing water and sanitary sewer mains or service lines.
Are there any questions for Mr. Harrington? Mike, do you have any comment on your report?
Mr. Harrington covered it all. Again, the loading space is just a minor detail, but we recommend it be removed just to avoid any potential ambiguities or issues with future uses as time goes on, as the site plan will become the permanent record of what's permitted on the site.
Sally, do you have any comment?
No further comment?
Are there any questions for any of the 3?
Just a quick clarification. Signage would be, they'll be allowed a sign on the building and then also on the monument sign?
The monument sign would be subject to whatever agreement with the landlord that they have, but potentially if it would be allowed. And then yes, they're allowed a sign that's the size in square feet as they have in linear feet of tenant space.
Thank you.
There's no additional questions, Mr. Chair. I'd move to acknowledge receipts of the memos November 1st, October 5th, and October 5th.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Would the applicant like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Andy Andre, Avanti Development Group, 330 Enterprise Court, Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, 48302. I think, as Mr. Harrington ran through the staff report, the three items are all agreeable. I think that's absolutely fine. The loading space, we remove that from the site plan, and we can submit that to staff. The, prior to beginning construction, the applicant shall verify the existing sidewalks, ramps, and accessible spaces are compliant. We can certainly do that and submit that to staff and to OHM, and then address the third item as well, showing the existing utilities and conferring that there are no conflicts with the proposed plantings that are along Michigan Avenue. So no objections on any of those items, Mr. Chair.
Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Chairman, I move to open the public hearing at 7:57, affording the public an opportunity to speak to this issue.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. With the public, is there anyone who'd like to make a comment?
And I move to close the public hearing, Mr. Chairman, at 7:58.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there any comment regarding the application for the final site plan for the remodeling of the suite at 465 East Michigan?
I'll make a motion to approve with the conditions.
Second.
Any comment on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next on the agenda, we have a motion for the, we have an application of Green Trend for the final site plan for the remodeling of the existing 4,131 square foot suite within the structure to create an adult use marijuana retail space at 465 East Michigan. We received your reports earlier.
So I guess the question to the planning commission is, do you have a preference on whether I give you the presentation effectively, the same one that I just gave you, or if I just stay up here and we can chat about it?
I think we can just ask if you.
Perfect. I don't
If
want
there's any
to
questions.
extend the meeting longer than it needs to be.
That's correct. So are there any questions for Mr. Harrington, Mr. Arbach, or Ms. Boss?
There's nothing different. It's just,
There was an identical site plan both times that was submitted, which is the goal, essentially, to have two identical site plans submitted.
want to clarify for our listeners. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, let's keep this moving then. I'll move to acknowledge receipt of the three memos, November 1st, October 5th, and October 5th.
Second.
All those in favor of?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Again, would the applicant have any additional? That's fine.
Then, Mr. Chair, I'll move to open the public hearing, affording the public an opportunity to speak to this issue at 7:59 PM.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Are there any public comment?
Move to close at 8 o'clock.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I'll make a motion to approve with conditions.
I'll second the motion.
I don't think there is, but is there any comment? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next on the agenda, we have an application from Ryan Fox of Impact Fitness for a special land use in the SBA 1 district from Appendix A, Article 4, Section 11A04, parentheses 1, for a gym/fitness center and a combined preliminary final site plan remodeling the two existing suites totaling 22,170 square feet to create a Planet Fitness at 946 East Michigan, parcel 18-12-31-490-003. Mr. Harrington.
Absolutely. This is not a marijuana proposal, but actually a proposal for a gymnasium health club. So it's 946 East Michigan Avenue, action item 22-33, special land use and a combined site plan for Impact Fitness LLC that intends to open up a Planet Fitness. So the location is on the south side of East Michigan Avenue. A good barometer is it's near the Freesia plant, what isn't essentially. It's zoned the SPA 1. Okay, it goes back for some reason now too. Ben, can you just click it forward? Thank you. And maybe again. Cool. We are ordering a clicker, so hopefully this issue dissipates in the future. So the special land use for the gymnasium and health club, as the planning commission, you just recommend approval to the city council. But for the combined site plan, it is both a preliminary and a final site plan, so it should be treated as a final site plan. Engineer Boss, as well as Engineer Humphreys, were able to look at the site and have made recommendations themselves. The current property, it was previously a powerhouse gym in one portion of the tenant suite, and then another tenant suite was the former Ace Hardware location. The applicant is proposing to push them together. It is 53,244 square feet shopping center, and the proposed gym is expected to take up 22,107 square feet of that. According to Washtenaw County records, it was built in 2007. I don't know why it goes back. All right. So the special land use requirements, the 1 through 7 that we've been over, will be harmonious in accordance with the general objectives of the master plan, designed to be as harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing and intended character. It will not change the essential character of the area. It will not be hazardous or disturbing to existing or nearby uses or uses in future. Will be an improvement in relation to the property and to the immediate vicinity. It will be served adequately by essential public services, or that they can do that themselves. Will not create excessive additional public costs or be a financial burden to the economic welfare of the city, and it will be consistent with the intent and purpose of this ordinance and other ordinances which are used for this establishment. It's going back for some reason. Okay, cool. So a staff review found that 1, 2, 4, 5, 6 were all adequately met with by the application. We have a couple concerns as it relates to number 3, that will not be hazardous or disturbing to existing abutting and nearby uses or uses regionally anticipated in the future. The applicant should remove the loading zone striping from the former Ace Hardware location and restripe the space for parking if in fact they do intend to remove the loading space. And then 7, we would like clarification on the proposed hydro massage services, as it could potentially be constituted as myotherapy establishment, which would require an additional special land use and a license from the city if they are proposing actions that would be consistent with a general massage therapist. We do not believe that to be the case, but just doing our due diligence to have the applicant check. For the combined site plan requirements, it's the same as the final site plan. So looking at area, width, height, setbacks, general character, general appearance of the store, the site arrangement, safety paths, lighting, signs, and then as well as those engineering considerations. So out of all of those, the only concern that staff had, the applicant's really not proposing any exterior changes except signage, so we will require the applicant to submit a sign permit. So we would have 2 recommendations for you. It would be first to recommend the approval of the special land use for Impact Fitness if the applicant sufficiently addresses the following concerns, that the 8 parking spaces to the building's west elevation should be restriped and the existing loading zone striping should be removed if in fact they are removing it. The Planning Commission should ask the applicant to provide more information about the facility's anticipated water use and to confirm that the site's existing utility services will be adequate. We don't have concerns from the engineering perspective, however. And then the applicant should provide additional information about the proposed tanning and hydro massage services to demonstrate whether those activities are considered separate use or a separate special land use under the city zoning ordinance. And then we would ask that you move to approve the combined site plan with those same 3 conditions as well.
Mike, do you have any further comment on your report?
I would echo Mr. Harrington's and only add that if the commission so chooses to recommend a condition that the loading space striping would be removed, that's an example of the sort of discretionary evaluation and review that's supposed to take place during the special land use process to make sure a site's designed and will operate safely and won't have any negative impacts on adjacent uses.
Sally, do you have any comment on your report?
I do not. I have no outstanding issues at this time.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to acknowledge receipt of the memos dated November 1st, October 28th, and November 1st.
Second? Second the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is the applicant here?
And if we could ask the applicant to address two things. One was the comment made during the public comment period about controlling noise and commotion to adjacent properties, specifically the residential units at Berwick Park. And then for my edification, because I'm entertaining a number of calls and inquiries, assuming these motions pass and then the council approves the special land use, when do you hope to begin construction activity and open?
Absolutely. So my name is Adam Willies. I'm the CEO and owner of Impact Fitness. We are a Planet Fitness franchisee based out of Brighton, Michigan. We operate 44 Planet Fitness locations at the current time. To kind of hit on all the high notes, so we are looking forward to bringing this center to the community. We're investing about $3.5 million into the space. It'll be a full high-end. It's going to be low-cost, high-value. If you're, yep, Ryan has got a kind of an idea what the gym is going to look like. It's our whole model, if you're familiar with it, is low cost, high value. So we have two different membership types, $10 and $25 a month, no commitment memberships. As far as the center itself, we'll actually have, because employees were concerned, so we'll have 6 at peak times. We always have 2 on at any given time, 6 during peak hours. Generally speaking, we'll employ about 25 to 30 people per location. As far as the items that were brought up, we're absolutely going to remove the loading zone and restripe those 8 spots. Not an issue for us whatsoever. As far as our water consumption, we use roughly about 1,000 gallons a day. We do utilize touchless faucets, low flow shower heads, low flow toilets, low flow urinals to try to maintain our eco-friendly status. We're actually we're pretty ESG focused. Our organization is, because we're a franchisee, we can't be B Corp certified, but we're actually B Corp eligible by SCORE. So we actually make ESG a big part of our business. So certainly a focal point for us as well. As far as the tanning, hydromassage, if you're familiar with our brand at all, so we don't do actual massage. There's no hands-on massage that's going on. Hydromassage is simply like a massage chair bed that you sit in, and it uses high pressure water heads to actually massage your back up and down. So there's no actual hands, people touching people. Same thing with tanning. It's all monitored and controlled by the employees and staff, but it is single use. The staff isn't going in there with anyone or anything along those lines. And then as far as the public's concerns, we are updating all of the air handlers, so HVAC and air conditioning won't be an issue. We never open our doors. We don't have any speakers on the outside of the building. We keep everything pretty well contained inside of our facilities. Is that it? Was it the last?
Questions for the applicant?
When you said contain, you don't hold any classes or anything that would potentially go outside? I've been at
No.
other gyms where people have gone outside.
Yeah.
I tried to remember whether or not you provided that. So.
Yeah. So we offer free fitness classes with all of our memberships, but those are all inside. We don't do anything outside. No flipping tires or anything like that. So,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Very much.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to open the public hearing, affording the public an opportunity to speak to this issue at 8:10 p.m.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there any further public comment?
Come to the podium.
Just have a question.
We got to, ma'am, if you wouldn't mind coming to the podium, because we want to get you on the record. Want to make sure everybody can hear you.
Barbara Anderson again. Do you have, are your facilities amicable for disabilities?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes, we're fully ADA compliant.
As we get older, we get Thank you.
Hi, I have just 2 quick questions, and they may be part of your packet because I don't have site plans. First, was the fencing on the side of Ace Hardware removed, that area? And then the second is when they mentioned about water usage, so I think he had said 1,000 gallons a day, so that's about 30,000 a month. Is that any issue for the city as opposed to what was previously in those spaces? Thank you.
Oh, okay, yeah, I can. So the water usage was more, we were just asking for the applicant to confirm it to make sure that it matched the original estimates they had given us. There was no concern. It was previously a gym. And I believe talking to the folks as well, they actually chose the location based on the available water to them. So it is not a concern of the city or the applicant. Mr. Chairman, I move, unless there are additional comments, there appear to be none, I move to close the public hearing at 8:12.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there any comment on the application?
No, I'm just glad that it's going to be open, and a lot of people are interested in it, and we welcome you to Saline.
Oh, and for construction purposes, you guys were asking.
Oh, yeah.
Timeline-wise, we're looking to go as soon as we get permits. We're ready to start construction immediately. We want to try to get open and capture those New Year's resolutions. So we're really trying to target the end of January.
Okay, so first quarter 2023. Okay, very good. Mr. Chairman, if there are no additional questions for staff or the applicant, I move to recommend with the 3 enumerated conditions.
Second.
Any further comment, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I will move to approve with conditions the application for the combined preliminary final site plan.
Second.
Any further questions on this? All those in favor of the motions?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Just for clarification's sake, Deputy Clerk Ritchie, first meeting in December for this?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay. See you on December 5th, City Council.
Moving on, we have an application of AM and BH Industries LLC for a final site plan, remodeling the existing 1,350-foot square building and adding 30 parking spaces to create a medical marijuana provisioning center at 751 West Michigan, parcel 1818-01-325-007.
And Mr. Chair, as noted, I am recusing myself on this one.
Thank you. Mr. Aaron.
Yeah, given a presentation.
Should be the last one, Ben. Cool. So it's 751 East Michigan Avenue, action item 22-24. It's a final site plan for a medical marijuana provisioning center for AM and BH Industries. Just want to click through. There's like 5 of them, I think, this time. Okay, so the location is the former Mickey's Dairy Twist location, south side of Michigan Avenue. We saw this case earlier tonight. It is zoned C3. The request is for the final site plan, which is approved or denied by the Planning Commission, a formalized site plan based on the zoning requirements, general appearance, engineering reviews, and a specific concept. As I mentioned earlier, any changes to the site plan that are deemed to be material or any of the caveats listed in our code would instigate a site plan review that would then come back before this body. It's a 1,350 square foot building that they're proposing to use. The home will be torn down and it was built in 1951. So similar to the other ones, area, width, height, and setbacks, natural resources impacted, building location, site arrangement, parking and loading, site access, safety paths, landscaping, lighting signs, floor plan, and then all of our engineering considerations are part of the review here tonight. So going into what our reviews were, as now was just established as a condition on the adult use preliminary site plan, the applicant will need to essentially remove the existing non-conforming sign. I know Mr. Morrow had some concerns about the landscaping, which is whether or not the Planning Commission would like to add additional conditions or considerations for landscaping on the eastern portion of the lot. And then lastly, site access and circulation, whether the site should be brought into greater conformity with the site access and management standards, and then any issues identified by MDOT should be addressed. So it goes to our recommendations. After reviewing Ms. Boss's engineering memo, Mr. Auerbach's planning memo, We recommend that you move to approve the final site plan for AM and BH Industries with the conditions. One, the structural modifications shall not increase any existing nonconformities. Two, any issues identified by the Michigan Department of Transportation should be addressed. Three, that the applicant will need to propose which I guess we could now strike and then say the applicant will need to remove the nonconforming sign. 4, spot elevations at all 4 corners of the proposed barrier-free parking spaces should be provided to verify ADA compliance. 5, detail for the 6-inch sidewalk shall be provided. And then 6, the bioretention storage volume calculation table shall be verified for its accuracy. And then they will have to provide another means of compliance with that specific standard. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Harrington?
Just a point of order, I guess, for myself. Since this is a final site plan, why are we having a separate open meeting?
So
Looking at the agenda?
all site plans get public hearings, but because the adult and the medical are heard separately. So the first one that you heard was for the preliminary for adult. This is their final for medical.
Okay, so we do this for marijuana only? This is something we do?
Yes.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to clarify.
Mike, do you have any additional comment?
I think Mr. Harrington touched on all the high points. Again, that the Planning Commission can determine whether or not the adjacent property to the east is a conflicting use. The ordinance does consider parking lots to be conflicting, so essentially you have discretion to require additional landscaping there. And otherwise, with no additional comments, but I'll take any questions if anyone has any.
I would like to see some additional landscaping there, and I want to piggyback on something you said earlier when we first considered this issue. So, per the amendment that Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh offered, the existing sign has to be removed. Regardless, it would have to have been relocated anyways, correct?
So in looking that up just a moment ago, existing non-conforming signs are allowed to be maintained, but there are essentially only the face can be replaced over time. There's some question of whether or not they've been abandoned over a certain amount of time, whether or not they can no longer be used if the use of the site changes. But essentially, my reading of it is it can be maintained, provided that only the face is changed by a future user of the site.
Okay, so maybe when we get to the applicant's comments or statements, they can address that. If they, knowing now that it appears we're not going to be able to preserve the existing sign, will it remain in that same location or will it be moved elsewhere? And if it's moved from what's enumerated on, damn things don't have page numbers, I'm sorry. L1.0. Looks like there'd be some space for some additional vegetation, plantings, landscaping in that vicinity, but the applicant can address that in just a moment. Thank you.
Sally, do you have any additional comment?
I do not. Ben covered pretty much everything I had. We will be requiring that second best management practice, which will likely be another bioretention, which should fit in one of those open islands or in the front or the back corners.
Any further questions?
Planner Auerbach, you were mentioning additional landscaping. Exactly where would you be putting it? I'm looking at L1. And we mentioned on the east side, there's not a lot of footage on it because of the non-conforming use, so.
That's right. So that would be part of the consideration. There does seem to be some grass area to the south of the building, adjacent to what I think are the parking spaces. So it would be limited, but there does seem to be some space for additional landscaping.
The only recommendation I might have is somehow working with our arts and culture. There is a painting that's on the one side. They would turn it and put it on the east side of the building so that it faces the parking lot as you drive west on Michigan Avenue. That might be a way of actually improving not only the landscaping, but an artistic approach.
Mr. Chair, if there's nothing further for staff or our consultants, I would move to acknowledge receipt of the memos November 1st, October 27th, and October 27th.
Second.
Is all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion passes. One last comment.
One more.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission, Andy Andre from Avanti Development Group. And I think all those items that we addressed during the preliminary site plan, I think all carry over because we had submitted the exact same site plan. And I do want to say that I do, I'll echo what staff says. I do think, and Mr. Mayor as well, the landscaping, the availability, we can certainly incorporate some landscaping along the east side of it, especially the parking. So if you look at what some of the grades and the elevations, as you continue east, the property to the west is a little bit higher, then there's us, and it kind of steps down. And so I think incorporating some landscaping, especially with that parking that immediately faces the adjacent property, that will be effective. I think that's where they're most effective, and we're totally in agreement with adding some landscaping there. We'd be happy to submit that to staff for their final review as well. And then, as Ms. Boss had mentioned, we had already discussed the location of a second bioretention island. We're in total agreement with that. And I'm glad you brought up the sculpture, because that was when we did our first walkthrough of the property. You know, it's a pretty prominent feature right on that west side of the building. So that was one of the things we identified right away. Let's keep that in a safe place. And so what I think would be really a good opportunity, because of where the position of the building is, kind of on the eastern side of it, we can bring some landscaping up, but then we have this kind of monolithic wall located on the east. I think the placement of that sculpture, that wall sculpture, would be great on that east side. It would provide a little bit of breakup, and then also some good feature as you're heading westbound. It'll give some breakup of that building. So we had saved it, we planned on doing it, and I'm glad you had brought that up. So I think we're in agreement with all those items. Again, I think the sign is one of those items where I'd like to, this location, the pole is there. I know, I think it was brought up a little bit earlier about the clear vision. Just to keep in mind, it is a pole. There is clearance. It sits about 8 foot high. So when you consider clear vision, you're only considering it 3.5 feet off the ground. So at that point, it's not really an obstruction. So the location of it, we would just like to keep that location and reface it in accordance with the requirements of the ordinance. I think that offers the best ability to do that. We will provide landscaping in and around it, more of flower beds and what have you, making nice arrangement in and around it. So I think, with those items, we feel very, comfortable working with staff on the remainder of the items. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion passes.
Thank you. I just have a couple quick questions. I appreciate that the mayor did bring up about landscaping. I'm a resident of the west side, and I don't think people realize the impact of when that house was removed, of what that was going to look like for that property, and the fact that you can now see the units behind it. I would like to see, and it may already be incorporated in your plan, so I apologize if it is, some sort of screening to the rear of the property to sort of define the actual property for this location. And then secondly, I would just like to publicly state that I am not in favor of maintaining the sign as it is currently. I'm not in favor of perpetuating nonconformities. I think that something lower, something a little bit less noticeable would be better, or no sign at all. I don't feel as though we need a giant marquee for it. Thank you.
Sure, Mr. Chair. What I'd like to say is it's the location so much more than is the size of the signage. So I would be in agreement that we could shrink down the size or remove the sign entirely and redo the sign, but the location is primarily the issue.
Hi, I'm on the west side as well. I'm in agreement with Mr. Gerbaugh and Ms. Dillon about the sign. I'd like to see it removed. No sign at all. I don't think we need to advertise this. It's going to sell itself or it's not. Additionally, I still have concerns that people on that side cannot get into town because we have no sidewalk right now. There's no way. There's trucks that consistently block what used to be the sidewalk there and the driveway. And I've seen people like trying to figure out during rush hour and busy times of day, how am I going to get around this? They don't want to step foot on the property. It's covered in dirt and mud, and Lord knows what else is there. And there's no like fence going around the property at all. It's a construction zone, and there's nothing blocking it off from kids getting in there and getting hurt. We need to do this now. It needs to be done tomorrow. And they need to find a way for people on that side, whether it be the apartments, River Ridge, Austin Commons, to be able to get into town, because we can't cross the street. There's no sidewalk across the street, and nobody wants to cross 12 there anyways. It's dangerous. Additionally, that sign that used to be on the western front of the building, I'd like to see it, instead of being put on that building, I'd like to see it put in town on a more traditional Saline building. I think it's classic painting, and it needs to be put on an appropriate building. Thank you.
There are no additional public comments, Mr. Chair. I'll move to close the public hearing at 8:27.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chair, if I may interject, just to go over our clear vision requirements, section 7.04 of our zoning appendix, on any interior lot, no fence, wall, screen, hedge, sign, or other structure or planting shall obstruct the visibility of a driveway either on a parcel or an adjacent parcel between the height of 30 inches and 10 feet, measured a distance of 20 feet back from the point where the driveway intersects the right-of-way line. That would make the sign non-conforming in that specific ordinance, I believe, as well, due to the location of the sign and the location of the right-of-way.
So what would you like us to do with that information?
It was just to note that the sign is non-conforming according to several different aspects of our code. It's not just one, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think just reiterating Planner Auerbach's point that now bullet 3 should state removal of the sign.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll make that.
Mr. Gearbaugh, if I may, I'd like to add a seventh condition.
Okay, go ahead.
Sounds like Mr. Gearbaugh is willing to make the motion to approve with conditions, noting the amendment to item 3, and then my seventh would be additional landscaping / vegetation / screening be installed specifically along the back or eastern side of the property.
Can I add an eighth condition then? I agree with, there should be at least silt fence, if not orange construction fence, adjacent to when the sidewalk is poured. It's very dangerous out there right now, and I don't believe it conforms to section SCSC Part 91. I would love to see the silt fence or construction fence installed to maintain the runoff.
And before I move all of that, one clarification with this landscaping thing. To the west, along the parking lot, there doesn't appear to be any kind of screening between the two properties?
I believe there's a retaining wall along that side.
Yeah.
I was about to say, I believe it's concrete.
Okay, that's why I wanted to clarify. I wasn't sure what it was. Okay, thank you. With that, I will move forward with the 8th condition, clarifying the nonconformance, landscaping, and I believe the additional site
Silt fence.
fencing and so forth.
So it's the fencing during construction activity.
Yes.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Are there any other comments or questions regarding the motion or any of its 8 conditions?
Just a comment. I appreciate what you've been doing on this. I know there's been a lot of concerns on it, but from my perspective, this lot has a lot of improvement that we're seeing, and I appreciate there are some of these things that we'd like to see cleaned up, but I think we've worked to a good point on this property, and looking forward to this completion as soon as possible. Thank you.
And just as a comment, I would encourage, just for your own general liability, that, and I realize the materials supply chain, but safety is of prime importance. With that, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion passes 5-0.
With one abstention.
5-0 with one abstention.
Mr. Chairman, if there's nothing further to be brought before Planning Commission this evening, I would move to excuse the absences of Secretary Treasurer Heft and at-large members Beardsley and Fosdick.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 8:31.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes at 8:31.